In 1985, Apple's board of directors voted to remove Steve Jobs from the company he built in his parents' garage. In 2000, Blockbuster's CEO sat across the table from the founder of Netflix, a man offering to sell his entire company for $50 million, and laughed at him. In 2007, Howard Schultz watched the company he had poured his soul into for 2 decades become a symbol of everything cheap, mediocre, and forgettable in American culture. 3 of the greatest business minds of the last 100 years. 3 catastrophic, world-class failures. And in every single case, the disaster didn't come from outside. It came from within. It came from the one place no competitor, no recession, no market shift could reach. It came from a decision they made when nobody was watching. What if the most powerful wealth-building education you will ever receive isn't in their success stories, but buried inside the catastrophes they barely survived? That is exactly what we are about to find out. And before we go any further, if you have ever watched a video about building wealth and thought, I already know this, I want you to stay. Because what you are about to hear is not what you already know. It is the thing every highlight reel leaves out on purpose. And it will change how you make every major business decision for the rest of your career. Like this video right now. Share it with one entrepreneur who needs to hear what I'm about to say. Subscribe and hit the bell because we go deep every single week on the strategies that actually build lasting wealth, not just the ones that look good on a thumbnail. Now, let's get into it. I want to start by telling you something personal. 3 years ago, I was building what I thought was the smartest, tightest, most bulletproof business model I had ever put together. Every number made sense. Every hire felt right. Every decision came from a place of what I genuinely believed was clear, rational thinking. And then, quietly, almost invisibly, it started to fall apart. Not because the market changed, not because a competitor appeared, but because I had made a decision 6 months earlier, a decision that felt completely reasonable at the time, that had a slow leak in it I refused to see. I was too close to it. I had too much identity wrapped up in it. And by the time the damage was undeniable, I had lost 12 months and more money than I want to say out loud. I tell you this because what I discovered in the wreckage of that experience is what this video is really about. I stopped studying success. I started studying failure. Specifically, I started studying the failures of the most successful founders in history, the ones they almost never talk about, and what I found changed everything. Let me take you back to 1984. Apple has just launched the Macintosh with one of the most iconic advertising campaigns in history. Steve Jobs is 30 years old, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and standing on top of the world. The press is calling him the most important entrepreneur of his generation. The board, the very people who are about to betray him, are applauding in the front row. And then it goes wrong. Not suddenly. Slowly. The Mac is underperforming its sales targets. Jobs begins pushing back harder, demanding more, trusting fewer people. He starts building a cult of personality so thick that no one inside Apple can give him honest feedback anymore. His lieutenant, John Scully, the man Jobs himself had recruited from Pepsi, the man he had personally chosen, begins telling the board what everyone else was too afraid to say. That Steve Jobs had become a liability. In May of 1985, the board stripped Jobs of all operational responsibility. He was pushed to a ceremonial office with no team, no power, no project. A golden cage. He resigned 4 months later. Now here is the detail that history almost always skips. Before he was fired, Apple's engineers had presented Jobs with data, clear, consistent, unmistakable data, showing that the Mac was priced too high for the market it was trying to reach. Jobs dismissed it. Not once. Multiple times. Not because he lacked intelligence, but because he had become so convinced of his own vision that contradictory evidence stopped computing. He had confused being brilliant with being infallible. And in business, in life, that confusion is one of the most expensive mistakes a human being can make. Ask yourself right now, and I mean really ask yourself, when was the last time someone on your team gave you feedback that made you genuinely uncomfortable? And what did you do with it? Did you sit with it? Did you investigate it? Or did you file it away somewhere in the back of your mind under, they just don't understand the vision? Because that filing cabinet is where empires go to die. Now, I need you to hear this next story very carefully, because this one doesn't just explain a failure. This one explains why most entrepreneurs are one bad habit away from becoming extinct without ever seeing it coming. The year is 2000. Reed Hastings, the co-founder of a small DVD-by-mail startup called Netflix, flies to Dallas, Texas. He walks into Blockbuster's corporate headquarters. At this point, Blockbuster is a $6 billion empire, 9,000 stores, 60,000 employees, a brand so dominant that going to Blockbuster was a cultural ritual embedded in the weekly life of millions of American families. Hastings sits across the table from Blockbuster CEO John Antioco and makes his pitch. Netflix is struggling. He needs a lifeline. He offers to sell the entire company, every algorithm, every customer, every line of code, for $50 million. Antioco's team laughed. Not metaphorically, they literally laughed. $50 million. Today, Netflix is worth over $220 billion. The last Blockbuster store on Earth, one single store, in Bend, Oregon, is now a tourist attraction. People visit it the way you'd visit a museum exhibit about something that used to exist. But here is what I need you to understand about why this happened, because the surface story is not the real story. The surface story is, Blockbuster was arrogant and missed a trend. That's the version that sells. The real version is more disturbing. Blockbuster's executives knew streaming was coming. They had smart people. They had data. They had analysts telling them that the consumer behavior landscape was shifting. There was even an internal proposal, an actual plan, to launch a Blockbuster streaming service and eliminate late fees before Netflix could become a real threat. The CEO approved it. Then the board killed it. Why? Because Blockbuster was generating $800 million a year in late fees alone. $800 million from charging customers money for forgetting to return a movie on time. And no board of directors looks at $800 million in annual revenue and says, let's walk away from this and bet on something unproven. So they didn't, and Netflix didn't have to defeat Blockbuster. Blockbuster's own comfort defeated Blockbuster for them. What is your late fee? I want you to sit with that question because I'm going to come back to it at the end of this video, and I want your answer ready. What is the revenue stream, the process, the habit, the assumption in your business that feels too profitable, too comfortable, too proven to question? That might actually be the thing quietly building the walls of your own cage. The third story is different, because this failure didn't come from ego, and it didn't come from comfort. It came from something that almost every ambitious entrepreneur will experience if they build anything worth building. It came from falling in love with scale. Howard Schultz didn't create Starbucks, but he created what Starbucks became. He saw the coffee culture of Milan, the warmth, the ritual, the sense of genuine community, and he believed he could bring that to America. Not just coffee, a feeling, a third place between home and work where people felt like they belonged. And for years, it worked. It worked so well that the growth targets became addictive. New stores, more markets, faster expansion. Between 2006 and 2008, Starbucks was opening an average of 7 new locations per day, not per week, per day. The stock price dropped nearly 90%. Customers started saying that Starbucks felt like a fast food chain with better marketing. The coffee machines had been replaced with taller, automated espresso makers, faster, more efficient, but they no longer filled the store with the smell of fresh ground coffee beans. That smell had been invisible, unmeasured, and irreplaceable. The baristas who used to know your order were now working 6-minute drive-through windows. The soul had been optimized out of existence. Schultz had to come back as CEO in 2008 and do something almost no executive is willing to do. He closed every single Starbucks location in America, all 7,100 of them, for one afternoon, to retrain every barista in the art of making espresso. He flew 300 store managers to New Orleans, a city still recovering from Hurricane Katrina, to reconnect the company to something larger than a P&L statement. He killed the automated machines and brought back the ritual. He scaled the system, but he forgot to scale the soul. And the day those two things separated was the day the brand started dying from the inside. Now listen to me very carefully, because this is the part of the video where I need your full attention. I just gave you 3 stories, 3 different founders, 3 completely different industries, 3 completely different types of failure. And if you look at them side by side, you might think they have nothing in common. Jobs was about ego, Blockbuster was about greed, Schultz was about speed. But they are all the same story. They are all one story, and it goes like this. At some point in every business that grows beyond a certain size, a gap opens up. The gap between what is true and what is comfortable to believe. The gap between what your customers need and what your operation has been optimized to deliver. The gap between who you are at your best and who you have slowly, quietly, invisibly become. And the single most dangerous thing an entrepreneur can do, more dangerous than any competitor, any recession, any market disruption, is to stop looking at that gap honestly. Jobs stopped looking at it. Blockbuster's board stopped looking at it. Schultz stopped looking at it, and to his extraordinary credit, he is the rare founder who looked again before it was too late. Radical, painful, unglamorous honesty. That is the root. That is the whole game. Everything else is a symptom. So let's talk about what you actually do with this. Because information without application is just entertainment, and I didn't come here to entertain you. Here is the framework I call reverse engineer riches. 3 practices, not theories. Practices, things you actually build into how you operate. The first is hunt for the early signal. Every disaster in the history of business had an early warning sign that somebody saw and chose to ignore, dismiss, or defer. Not a crisis, a signal, a data point. A customer complaint that didn't seem significant. A team member who left and said something on the way out the door that you filed under sour grapes. Your job is to build a habit, not a meeting, not a workshop, a genuine habit of hunting for those signals before they become headlines. Ask yourself weekly, what is the thing that, if I ignored it for 6 more months, becomes the worst thing that ever happened to this company? The second is interrogate your comfort. The places in your business that feel the safest, the most proven, the most profitable, those are the places that deserve your most skeptical attention. Not because they're wrong, but because comfort is where blind spots live. Block 30 minutes every month for one question only. What am I not questioning that I should be? What assumption am I treating as a fact simply because it has worked up until now? Third practice is to close the distance. This one is simple, but it will transform your business faster than anything else on this list. Close the distance between yourself and the people you serve. Not through surveys, not through data dashboards. Sit with your customers. Read their actual words. Listen to their actual frustrations. Because every major failure I have ever studied began with a founder who stopped being genuinely, uncomfortably close to the human beings their business existed to serve. Close the distance. Keep it closed. Make it non-negotiable. I want to close by bringing you back to a question I asked you at the beginning of this video. What is your late fee? That question is not really about revenue. It's not really about business models. It is asking you something much harder and much more important. It is asking, what are you clinging to? What are you protecting, defending, building your identity around? That might be the very thing standing between you and the version of your business, your wealth, your life that you are actually capable of building. Because the most expensive thing in entrepreneurship is not a failed launch, or a bad hire, or a deal that fell through. The most expensive thing is the assumption you stopped questioning, the revenue model you refused to examine, the feedback you were too proud to hear, the gap you stopped looking at honestly. Every founder in this video had a moment, one specific moment, where they could have seen it, where the information was available, where the signal was clear enough. And in that moment, the choice between comfort and truth was the choice between survival and collapse. You have that same choice available to you right now, not someday, today. So here is what I am asking you to do before you do anything else today. Write down your late fee, the real one, Not the comfortable answer, the honest one. The thing you have been protecting without fully examining. Write it down. Then ask yourself what it would cost you not to eliminate it, but just to look at it clearly, with the same honesty that Reed Hastings looked at his business in the year 2000 and said, "This model needs to change before the market changes it for us." That level of honesty, practiced consistently, applied ruthlessly to your own assumptions and your own comfort, is the single most powerful wealth-building tool available to any entrepreneur alive. Not hustle, not funding, not a perfect product or a perfect pitch. Honesty, the kind that's hard, the kind that costs something, the kind that makes you better before it makes you successful. That is the reverse engineering, and that is how riches are actually built. If something shifted for you today, if you felt that, share this video with one entrepreneur who needs to hear it right now. Not next week. Now. They will thank you. Like the video so more people find it. And subscribe, because every single week we go deeper into the real game of building wealth, not the version that looks good on Instagram, but the version that actually holds up when things get hard. I will see you in the next one.